I'm live. We're live. We're live. Right. Can anybody see this? This is the third attempt. So I really hope that it's working this time. So if it is, please make yourself known. Just let us know you're here. And then once you do, we can actually get into some sort of conversation. Until that time, you can watch me write. Oh, right. Okay, we've got two people. Who are you? Two people. Make yourself known. I'm Sam. 3 people. Great. Okay, so I haven't got as many questions. Yo, what's up? What's up, SM Edits? How's it going? Are you Sam as well? I haven't got too many questions, so I've found the live chat tab in the side now. So please feel free to throw some questions at me as we go. But I'll go through a couple of the questions that I have got at the moment, and then you guys can catch on and ask as we go. So the first thing is Jamie Bell is asking tips for approaching in London. So unless, Jamie, you have been living under a rock, and I wouldn't blame you if you have, it's not much better than the rest of this. Unless you've been living under a rock, there's no approaching in London right now. Not a good time, not a good place. And there are places you can go. So I don't necessarily recommend it, but if you guys find that you aren't putting anybody else at risk, you've got a bit of time and you want to go somewhere else, then you can go to Sweden. Sweden does not have a travel ban at the moment. Life, generally speaking, goes on in Sweden. And so you can go there and people are sort of having barbecues and partying and keeping life going at some speed, and the numbers don't seem to be rising too quickly there. Any tips for 18-year-olds like yourself going into uni in September? Yeah, some tips for you. Listen, uni is a completely different thing. One thing I would say to you, if your name is Sam, that I imagine you've been at school before and you're just moving from school to university, and the whole sort of social dynamic rearranges itself. Yo, man, yo, don't be stupid. I love Poland, man. What city are you from? So uni, it's like the whole thing rearranges. So all of the social balances and the social groups are going to rearrange, and you're going to find that in as least condescending and patronizing way as possible, Sam, like your identity won't be fully formed right now. Like you're not going to be 100% sure of the way that you are, the way that you express yourself, the way that you are around people. And what university does, which kind of throws a spanner in the works of life as you know it, is it rearranges all of this, and suddenly groups rearrange themselves, social dynamics rearrange themselves. People that were confident in school are not so confident when they go to university, and people who weren't confident in school become confident at university, and the whole thing rearranges. So the best thing that I would advise you to do is to just try and be cool with everyone. You don't need to like desperately try and form groups at university early on. You don't need to try and find the right people. There's this sort of fear with new undergraduates who are just going to university that if they don't find their best friends at the start, or if they fall in with not the best group of people at the start, then that's going to be their fate for the rest of the time there. You're in a lucky position that you actually have, hey, Les, bro, how's it going? You're in a lucky position where you've kind of come to this stuff a bit earlier. You understand a bit more about the social nuances of everything. So what I would recommend is to just be cool with everyone. At the start, you just want to sort of play the social field as much as possible. Be nice with everyone. If you're going to be in halls of residence, I don't know if you're going to be living at university, but if you're going to be in halls of residence, hang out in the communal areas. Make yourself sort of known to everyone. Don't show off. Don't try and assert yourself. Don't try and prove yourself. What often happens is the people that are really, isn't it more easy in you? The people that are really sort of assertive at the start and they look like the big fish, they often peak really early and then drop because all of that time in the limelight at the start, they end up doing something stupid, or people just get bored and annoyed. I think it's better to be the sort of tortoise in the proverbial hare and the tortoise race, and just take it easy, take it slow, man. Just find the communal spaces, join clubs and groups as much as you can, and make yourself known. Like, you're going to feel some time constraints. You're going to feel like you need to be working or you need to be doing certain things, but really, at least the first year in university, the best, unless you're, trying to be a doctor, or unless you've got some serious intention behind the academic stuff, the best thing you can do is focus on the social stuff. The only thing I really got from university, I got a bad degree from Nottingham University, which I clearly haven't put to good use. And so for me, the only thing I can really take away from university was social skills. It's really easy to learn to be more social and to make friends, and B, the friends themselves, like the really, really amazing contacts that I made there, both financial contacts, business contacts, and friends, people that you're going to live with after university and everything like that. So it is the best space to make friends, and I would treat it as a sort of government imbursed coming of age, right? Not so much the academic thing. I mean, it's great to read a lot and do as much as you can, but really just treat the whole experience like you've got 3 years free to figure shit out, have fun, and enjoy yourself. So you had a question, which isn't approaching girls easier in uni with Freshers Week? Yeah, I mean, Freshers Week, it's not even really approaching girls. It's like, you've just got to treat Freshers Week as everyone wants to experiment. No one has the same restrictions that they've had for their whole life. People have come from old-fashioned families, conservative families. They've come from school where they were judged on every mode and movement that they made. And now you're at university and suddenly you've got all this freedom. You've got almost total anonymity, and I guess a more liberal sense of dating and sexual freedom is going to be expected in university. So just use Freshers Week as a chance to let loose, to have fun, to let the experiences take you where they do. Don't try too hard. Don't try and game all the girls. Freshers Week is quite an empowering time for girls to just say, I like the look of that guy. He's my type. I, essentially want to go home and have fun with him. And so, I wouldn't worry too much about gaming during Freshers Week. Just put yourself out there and approach. Take the opportunities when they come. Trent Banner. Sam, what are the best places in the world to cold approach? Good question. Well, Trent, it kind of depends what you're looking for, right? It depends what kind of girls you're looking for, and it depends what you want to get from cold approach. If I were to give my top 3 places, I'm going to give my top 3 places in terms of how effective they are, in terms of how receptive the culture is to cold approach, and then my 3 favorite places. So in terms of receptivity, probably Budvar was up there. I actually haven't been to Ukraine, and I hear that Odessa can be very good in the summertime. Budvar people were very receptive, very, very nice place, beautiful place, attractive people, and the women were receptive to cold approach, I think, because it's normally a mix of Croatians, Serbians, Montenegrins, and a few tourists around early summertime who are traveling there. And so anyone from sort of Western Europe or America, people were fairly receptive there. Rio de Janeiro would be another one. The women are very receptive in Rio de Janeiro. It's very culturally ingrained for people to approach. And so there's no sense of taboo around it. A weird experience I had in Rio was at the start when I would approach girls, and I think I said this in the last one, but when they would sort of look at you as if to say, yeah, so what do you want to say? The whole introduction that we sort of learn in London and we think is necessary, because it largely is on the streets of London. In most cases, you don't, I mean, you should still say it because you don't just want to start a conversation mid-conversation, but you don't get any points for opening, right? It's about the attitude that you bring once you have opened. And it can be a little bit claustrophobic at the start because you get this sense that the culture is very different, which it is, and the guys are much more sort of physically expressive. They're very comfortable touching people early on, which is something we're not used to here, and which we're not used to here. And what tends to happen is you start thinking, wow, okay, I need to act like them, right? Because they're Brazilians, they know how it works, so I need to copy what they're doing. And then you start to kind of change the way you're acting. And that doesn't really work either, because in many ways, women can sort of sense that this isn't what you're used to. So I would say in every country that you do it, or any culture, there are some nuances to know. Rio, it's a cutesy culture. Like you're allowed to be a bit more, not sarcastic with your cheesiness, but like slightly ironic babies. Like you probably wouldn't call a girl baby a lot in the UK, but in Rio, it's kind of fun and cute and a bit more acceptable to kind of be cheesy and to be sweet like that. But just make sure that you're not changing the way that you are, because lying to yourself and acting in a way that doesn't feel correlated to the way that you're acting is never good. Even if you think that women are getting maybe bored of you because you're not making a move, or because you're not very physically comfortable at the time, it's better to be not very physically comfortable and get used to being physically comfortable at your own pace than to try and force yourself to be physically comfortable early on, if that makes sense. When you force it, it tends to have the opposite effect, and it tends to be uncomfortable, and they find it uncomfortable. So just move at your own pace and know that some women are going to like you, some women aren't. It's all a learning process. You don't need to rush through it. Just take your time, enjoy it, and keep approaching. Royal Banana. Best tip I can give is in the first 2 weeks, talk to everyone and do absolutely everything socially. So this is in response to you, Sam. This will be the best chance to find your close-knit friends after 2 weeks, people form groups. Agreed with the first part of that, Royal Banana. Be as social as you can with everyone. Be really chilled with everyone. Don't rush yourself. Don't imagine that, your time's important. The only important way to spend your time, as Royal Banana says, is socially. However, after 2 weeks, people form groups. Yes, they do. But those groups are by no means impenetrable. Those groups seem impenetrable at the start, and so people rush to find the right friends. But actually, you've got a year to figure that out. And if you are a cool person, you're going to find the cool people around you. So if you keep spending your time in public places, then you are going to be fine. And it really is important not to try and assert yourself, but just to be cool with everyone. It's a sort of interesting thing that I learned over time, that the people at university who at the start were very loud and they were going to be sort of reps for the clubs and charity representatives and all of this stuff, after a few months, people just found it all a bit pretentious, and they got tired of pretending to be so extroverted all the time. And the people that were just cool with everyone, that didn't bully the kid with glasses, or there's always some autistic children in university, some guys who just have absolutely no idea, and they always will receive a level of stick for that. And you just want to be cool with them. You want to be cool with everyone, because after some time, those are the people that actually end up being popular and get invited to stuff, because everyone knows they're a safe bet and they only bring positivity. So don't fall into the sort of group think and follow the crowd, but remain social and just be cool with everyone. Do you do business at Nottingham? I don't do business at Nottingham, no. No, but I went to university there. Hello, Ahmed from Syria. The world gave us too many lesbians. I don't think that's true. Don't be stupid. When do you think we can get back to day game? And do you think girls will be less receptive to being approached due to this COVID thing getting overblown? Yeah, good question. Yes, sir. I've thought about that a lot. Look, I think for the rest of this year, things aren't going to be like they were last year. Women are going to be less receptive. Social distancing is going to be something that we need to dehabitualize from our lives for the next few months at least, it's going to be weird, even if we're told to go up and shake people's hands to do so, because we've already formed the habit of running away from people in the street as opposed to going up and greeting them. So I think things are going to go back to normal, in that I think, human beings have only survived the way that we have and become sort of masters of the earth, the apex predator. We're only here because of our ability to socialize, because of the fact that we could use complex language and orchestrate large events and activities through the use of language and gossip. And so people love to talk, people love to meet. Studies of happiness have shown that physical contact and actually sexual activity are two major factors in both the lived experience, because happiness studies separate into lived experience and remembered experience. There's some controversy around whether that it's as simple as that, but essentially what you actually experience in the moment, like how happy are you now out of 10, that's the lived experience. And the remembered experience is how happy were you on your first day of university. It's like you might have an image of how that felt, but it's naturally going to be different to the way it was at the time, right? So things are going to go back to normal because people need to talk to each other, people need to communicate, and people know that they need to do that. And even the threat of species-wide annihilation, which these viruses seem to threat, I don't think is going to cause people not to be in contact with each other, because we're as good as dead if we're not in physical contact with each other, right? Guys, say what up to Les. Say what up to Les from Les Thomas, the YouTube channel. He is a good friend of mine, and he's on the comments somewhere. Enjoy freshers. You will never experience anything like it. Yeah, you're welcome, Sam. If you're comfortable answering, how many women have you been with, and how long have you been doing cold approach? Okay, I have been doing cold approach since I was 19. So I was actually in second year at university when I was having some psychological difficulties. Actually, I was just finding, this is what I was saying to you, Sam. It's like your whole identity, if you're a creative person as opposed to a strictly very rational person, your identity is less easy to form in a sort of steady and solid way. And so I had some sort of identity issues sort of going into university and during, where I sort of didn't really know exactly who I was, and that gave me some psychological discomfort. I broke up with a girlfriend in first year of university, or we broke up, I should say. And then that's really why I got into this, because I felt helpless. I felt like I'd just been lucky with everything that had happened, and I had no sense of autonomy over what I was doing. It was just, I had no idea. And so that's how I got into all of this stuff. So I started going out in Nottingham at the age of 19. And I would just go around the city centre with some of my friends who lived around there in Nottingham and Derby. Jordan, who's been on one of the videos, was one of the guys. And we would just go around and learn with each other. We'd go out and do what we called our immersions. We'd spend a weekend, like Friday, Saturday and Sunday, just approaching people. It's a bit weird. It was a bit much, to be honest, but it was fun at the time. Great memories. So I've been doing it for, what does that make? I'm 26 now, so 7 years. And in answer to your other question, how many women have I been with? I don't know, and that is the honest truth. Aged 21, I stopped keeping count. It was difficult to not keep count for the first sort of couple of years, because the numbers aren't so great that it's like me saying, don't think of a purple elephant. Well, the purple elephant's going to appear when you say that. And so for the first couple of years, I had a rough idea, and thankfully I don't now. I really don't recommend it, honestly. If you are somebody that finds yourself, sexually active and being able to enjoy the fruits of your youth, essentially, or the fruits of being a single guy in this case, I don't recommend keeping count, because what that does is it encourages comparison. It encourages you looking at someone else and comparing yourself to them, and whether you're doing better than someone else or you're doing worse than someone else, the act of comparison is what makes you unhappy. The act of comparison is what makes you not good enough. Even if you're saying, I'm better than that person, that doesn't make you happy, right? I've slept with more women than him. That's not making you happy. I've slept with less women than him. That's definitely not making you happy. It's like money. If you want to make money because you want to do something with it, right? You want to live in another country. You want to start a charity or an amazing business. Don't just make it to be better than your neighbor, right? There's no point. You're going to die. It doesn't matter. Don't keep count. I really don't. I don't like the whole lay count culture. I think it's I think it justifies a lot of the feminist spiel that we get in here. When we get the very, radical feminists hating on cold approach in general, I think it's as a result of these sort of hyper masculine sort of man-child things that we do, like counting our lays and sending pictures in Facebook groups. It's all just weird. And it's obvious to everybody outside of that circle that the person acting in that way and talking about their lay count is not someone who knows themselves and likes themselves. It's all something to make them feel better, make their ego feel better. But it's really obvious when you kind of detach from that matrix. It's very obvious that wasn't the sign of a sort of happy or high value person. So the whole, seeking as many lays as you can have in order to be a high value man is a paradox in itself, because the very act of seeking lays is not a high value behavior, right? It's like if you really like having sex and you meet some beautiful women, then go and have fun. Two consenting adults doing what they want to do. But if you're doing it to show your friends, or you're doing it to be better than someone else, or you're doing it so that you qualify for the amount of notches that you have, then you're chasing your own tail, and it's not going to make you happy. I guarantee it. Next question. English and Irish women are hardest for approaching. Depends what country you're in. If you're abroad, not true. In England, probably, yeah. But that's kind of the same with every country. The foreigners that you meet in any country are generally easier to approach because they don't have the same social flexibility and the same ability to form groups and friends as English people do. So you will find it. You will find that easier. Like the English women I've met I made friends with loads of English girls in Brazil, like English, German, Scandinavian girls, because they're very different. People are much more open when they're traveling. So I would say an Irish woman, maybe depends what part of Ireland as well. Let's not go there. In glorious Syria, women wear clothes experience of reading it without thinking that it's gonna, you can't read that book and look at the politics of it, right? I actually think in some ways a book like The Rational Male can be a little bit dangerous for some people, just because they read it and they not only take the great information, like the great advice and tips in it, but there is a certain tone in the way that he writes that is not coming from a good place. I don't mean it's pro-male or pro-masculine. I'm obviously all for pro-male and pro-female, but that's not the problem. The problem with it is that there's just little hints of nastiness that you get throughout the book, where he just says something that was just unkind. And I think any author, if they're coming from that place, it can be insidious the way that those ideas come into your mind, right? So the information there is great. I think the value by age, the sexual market value, and talking about that, I think that's hilarious and useful and true in many ways. But some of the stuff he says, you'll find it in paragraphs. And when I read it, I was actually quite susceptible to some of that. And I don't think the book did me much good on the whole. I would say the usefulness of the information was balanced out by the slightly unkind vibe that sort of is carried through with the good messages. And so what I would say is that you've got to be, it's like watching the news. You've got to watch the news for the news and not for the tone of the news, because the tone is inevitably negative. And I think the tone of the rational male is often negative. And so take the information, don't get carried away by the tone of it. Next question. Oh, so you want more books, right? Again, a much more exaggerated case, it would be a book called Pimp by a chap called Robert Beck, who was a pimp in the sort of, I think, 40s, 50s, 60s, maybe even 40s, 50s, 60s, around that time. And I really don't take the tone of that book. Don't try and emulate him. It's a pretty violent and horrific book in places, but it's beautifully written. If you're someone that likes good literature and, I guess there is a lot of psychology in there, sort of embedded in the stories that he tells, but it's a great book on women and men's relationships with women and the ways that damaged childhoods can affect you adversely. And potentially it also offers that insight at a time where it might be useful to you to see if you're slipping down that road with him. There's an autobiography of Casanova, which is epic. It's really good. And I will find the author for that and list it. I've forgotten the name of it, but it's an autobiography. It's quite long, but you get through it because it's really good reading. Any other books like those? Actually, Neil Strauss's The Truth is very good. But even with Neil Strauss, I think he's a little bit, honestly, I think he's cheesing it all over a bit. The Game and The Truth. The Game is like, do this and you will become amazing with women, and The Truth is like, everything I told you in the game was a lie, do this and you'll become good with them. I think he's an absolutely amazing salesman. So if you want to study the way he sells his ideas, then I think read those books. But they're going to give you this sense that your life is just going to transform if you take this mindset, and things take work. It's not quite as golden switch as he makes it seem. The Royal Banana, you're right. Anyone else? Stream lagging. No sound, no signal. Is it back, guys? Have you got it back? Okay, cool. Great. How do you maintain an abundant social circle after high school, after entering college? I feel many of my old social circles disappeared due to natural life progression. From Taka. Taka, is that from Tekken? I don't know. Tell me if it is. I love Tekken. How do you maintain an abundant social circle after high school? Well, look, what you're going to find after high school is that not everyone who you considered a good friend in high school will remain a good friend afterwards. I've got about 5 people from my high school, and I considered many of them very good friends. I've got about 5 people that have lasted the 8 or 9 years since high school. And so you don't have to worry about that, man. The people that you end up staying in touch with are the people that you were meant to stay in touch with and that you care about. It's very difficult to accidentally forget that you're friends with someone, or at least very good friends. So after high school, I would recommend just staying in touch with the guys that you feel closest to, or the girls that you feel closest to. Try and tighten it up. You don't need to be friends with everyone. Just take the people that you feel most drawn to, spend most of your time with them. And then, I don't know, it depends. Are you going to university or are you going into the big wide world? If you're going to university, then, I think we've covered a lot of that in terms of just put yourself in social spaces. I get a lot of guys asking about tips and techniques and things that you can do. But then when I ask about how their timetables look, it's like they never have opportunities to meet women, either because they're working or because they're staying at home in the evenings and the afternoons. And look, I always say that your logistics are the most important thing. You could have all of the skills in the world, and if you don't have an opportunity to use those skills, you will never get anything. Whereas if you have 0 skills, but you're constantly in good logistics, you're constantly in locations and arenas that provide opportunities, then great things are going to happen to you just by the law of averages, right? So If you're in university, put yourself in social spaces. If you're not in university, it's tough, man. You get a head start on the working stuff, but the social stuff is kind of difficult because you guys are going to naturally move in slightly different directions. So what I would recommend is to, keep the people that you know now close and put yourself in social spaces. Go to galleries, bars, clubs with the friends that you currently have, and try and branch your social groups out into other ones. When I came to London, I basically sent emails out to all the club promoters offering them value, saying I'm going to get a table, I want to bring some people to their places, getting a one-on-one meeting, and then sort of befriending them when I had them an opportunity to. And some of those people are really good friends of mine now. And that's provided me with lots of social opportunities because I've met people on their nights out and through them. And you basically just have to seek it out, man. You have to look for people that are going to be the kind of people you want to hang out with, right? And that's not always day gamers. It's not always people that are approaching. A lot of people that are approaching are stuck in that previous mindset of improving their lay counts and fighting against each other for territory, essentially. And it's not always a very good environment to be in. You might find that people who are naturally sociable, like club promoters or guys with girlfriends and a friendship circle around their girlfriends, are great opportunities. You can get in there, maybe meet some of the girls, hang out with them and their friends. I spend a lot of time third wheeling. I like third wheeling with my friends and their significant others because it's fun. You get to meet the friends as well. Don't you think it will be a while until you can day game again? I think that I'm going to be in Sweden from the 10th to the 14th of June, doing a boot camp there with Tusk. And so, no, I think I'm going to be out talking to people cold in the day in a month's time. Actually, so in London, it's going to be a long time. I think it's going to be maybe September, late September, early October. People are going to start just going out and talking to each other again. I don't think it's going to be longer than that. But really, it's probably going to be next spring before, at least London starts getting back to the way it normally is in the summer, because the winter time's never as good as it is in the summer, and particularly a Corona winter 2020 is not going to be the social mecca that we're all hoping for, unfortunately. So can I right back to day game as soon as this COVID thing dies down, or give it a couple of months after? Dude, you've got to just figure it out as you go along. No one knows. Yes, sir. No one knows. We don't know. We don't know when the lockdown's going to be lifted. We don't know how the rates of infection are going to be changed once it is lifted. We have no idea. So you just got to bear with the process or find another place to go. I'm going to do the latter, I think, because as long as essentially the way I'm looking at it is that as long as I'm not actively putting others in risk of, serious health problems, as long as I'm not spreading this thing and doing as much as I can to limit the potential downside of it, then I want to be social as soon as possible, because I know that it's important. And if it's important and it's not doing any harm and it's, back to work and it means I can help you guys and survive, then I'm going for it. So I don't think it's going to be in London, though, not this year. Any tips for escalating with girls who don't drink on dates? I often find on dates mutually having a few drinks helps spikes the sexual excitement, but when she doesn't drink, it's tough. I think you're probably, Royal Banana, I think you're probably projecting a little bit. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I know that obviously people drinking obviously lowers their inhibitions and generally makes it easier for them to act in a way that's sort of loose and spontaneous. But I would also imagine that it's not good to really think about that. And you're probably projecting onto the dates as well. Meeting a girl and thinking, oh, she's not drinking. Maybe she's not going to want to see me afterwards. But that's not necessarily true. I would just treat it the same way. When I'm on dates, I'm never really thinking about escalating or anything like that. I'm just focusing on her because I know when to escalate, I suppose. Well, by escalate, I guess we mean like, touch someone or kiss someone or just sort of climb that ladder of physical contact and comfortability with each other. But I don't think that can come from a place of action, like, right, now I'm going to touch her. It has to come from you engaging with her. It has to come from you looking at her, listening to the words she's saying, watching her mouth, her eyes, her face as she's saying that stuff, getting a feeling inside you. Once you're present and you're listening to her, you have the sort of space to that feeling arises that's like, oh, I'm attracted to her, right? I'm attracted. And I talked about this last time, but not she is attractive, but I am attracted. The difference is one is a description, someone is attractive, one is a process, being attracted, right? So that process is what's important. Looking at someone and knowing that they're beautiful is just an objective observation. Feeling the process of attraction to another person, with another person, that is not an objective observation. That's a subjective experience, and that's what's important. So if you're worrying about escalation on the date, just look at her, watch her speaking, watch her, watch and listen, because then you're going to get present, and it really helps. And then you're going to know what to do next. And when you get that urge to be like, I want to put my hand on my leg, right? And her legs are maybe pointing towards you, so her body language is giving you an idea that that's appropriate, then you can make that move. Right? So it's a dialogue. The whole thing is a dance. It's all a dialogue between you and her giving you subtle expressions that you can escalate, and then you giving her subtle expressions like the face of attraction when you're attracted to her, that what makes her want to move a bit closer to you. And if you're thinking about escalation, you're not giving her the cues on your face that you're attracted to her, because you're talking to yourself, and you have to be attracted to her, like presently attracted to her, for her to be giving you these cues and for you to know what to do. So that's what I would say. And it maybe sounds a little bit abstract, but it's just important to understand it and just do it. Some things you just got to remember these words when you're in that position on that date, and it's going to help it. Thoughts on Paul Janka and his Dr. Phil appearance, if you ever saw it? Julian Blanc mystery. Did any of the early guys inspire you before the London scene more or less took over and evolved? K-game. I don't know much about Paul Janka other than I have some mutual friends with him. I remember Julian Blanc when I was learning. And I think, I don't know. Honestly, I don't really know. I'll tell you what I really don't pay attention to them now. I don't pay attention to any of them now. Maybe because I learned early on from a different guy, actually, a guy called Arash Dibazar, who I don't follow him as much now, but I actually did learn some stuff from him. He would come out with these sort of little mantras or comments that I found really helpful. And I think he said something along the lines of like, when you get the message, hang up the phone. And I realized that all of these channels that I was still subscribed to and I was still listening to, that it was almost just a light entertainment. I wasn't learning or growing from them anymore. And I had that experience after about a year, 9 months to a year, with many of these channels. And RSD was one of them, where I realized that I just wasn't getting anything from it anymore. I'd got the message, and it's time to hang up the phone. Sometimes you just get in the habit of watching things, and actually what the person's saying isn't helpful to you in your situation. It just, you're acclimatized and accustomed to the sound of their voice, and I don't think that's a particularly good use of time. I think it's unhelpful. Who are the others? Mystery. I don't know, man. Like, I don't really think too much nowadays about the sort of history of pickup artistry, because really I don't consider myself to be in the same industry. If two industries or one industry exists, I see my job as to like make it easier for people to communicate. There are some difficulties that everyone has socializing as a result of their childhoods or insufficiencies throughout their childhoods, things they never learned, things they were never taught. And I don't really care so much about all of that stuff, right? Like how to be I used to care, but I don't care about how to be the perfect seducer, because I know I've been so far down that road and focusing on it and thinking it. I know that it's fruitless. I know that it doesn't give you what you're looking for, which is to feel better about yourself. And real good communication does, and honest communication does do that. And so I'm just more interested in that and people that are talking about that. And just to add to a bit of the gossip, I suppose, one interesting thing about Julian is, like, when I did follow him at the start, his style of communication was completely different to some of the snippets of videos that I've seen more recently since that big media sort of takedown of him. He used to be a very smooth, slow, deep communicator, and now it's all like crazy. But she's doing all this. I don't really know what's going on or why, or whether sort of that media witch hunt stripped down his cool guy persona and revealed what he's really like, or whether he's shifted from one mode to another mode. Maybe, I don't really know if there is one thing we're really like. We're quite transmutable depending on our environments, and maybe he's probably just on a process of discovery. But it's interesting to see how dramatically his communication changed after that event. Neil Aurora, moving in with girl for a couple of weeks in London. I've been seeing her since January. Is it normal to feel scared about it? Yeah, it's normal. It's normal. You need that fear because, being honest with you, man, it may or may not be a good idea. Like, it's not a problem, right? It's a couple of weeks. You're going to be fine. You're going to come out of it alive, the other side. But I guess there's an element of, like, knowledge that you guys are going to have to get to know each other in a way that you haven't known each other before, and that can be intimidating. I had a couple of, obviously, I had a couple of opportunities to not ride this out by myself, and I didn't take those because I personally thought that the potential for things to turn into a disaster were less when I was on my own, right? And I would rather resent being alone than resent being with the person that I'm with, especially if that's someone I care about, and it was. So I think it's normal to feel fear, man. I think you've just got to really deeply accept that you and this girl are going to know each other well coming out of it. You're going to share some stuff, and I would dive into that. I would see it as an opportunity to just get to know her as well as you can, open up about stuff, see it as an excuse to just get close, get emotionally vulnerable and get close with her. Doesn't mean, when I say emotionally vulnerable, I don't mean soppy and crying on her shoulder for the sake of it, unless you really need to cry. But I just mean to see it as an exciting opportunity to really get to know what someone's actually like and accept it. So I would just look forward to that as much as you can. But yeah, the fear is normal. Don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. It's only 2 weeks. And you're going to know someone a lot better after those 2 weeks. You're going to know a lot of interesting things about them, I should imagine. Just heard your lay count answer. Those are good thoughts. Thanks. But I think it's useful as a rough gauge for sexual experience and knowledge, though, especially in the sphere of cold approach. Flip River, I understand. I've got to be honest about this, and I really don't want to sound like in any way like high and mighty about it, but if that is a concern to you, then I don't think I'm in the right place to help, right? Like, I don't know, right? I have a rough idea, but I don't even want to talk about it, because if that is important, look, I can tell you that it's more than one and less than 1,000. I just don't want to go into it. I'm not selling that as a part of what I'm doing, and I don't really want to. But you're right. Keeping an exact count is not healthy. I think even thinking about it is not really healthy. I just don't think that's valuable to anyone. I don't think. Look, I can tell you that I have sexual experience, right? Because that's what you're going to want from the guy that's teaching you about dating. But anything more than that, I don't think is important. He said you're a bad day game coach. Clearly clueless guy. Who did? Who did Mr. Spawn? Where do you get your T-shirts from? Always looking sharp, Sam. This is from Uniqlo. This is called Airfit. It's an Airfit range. I normally get my white T-shirts from either the David Gandy collection in Marks and Spencer's. They're about £15 each. They're really good. They're sort of silky and muscle fit. So if you go to the gym, they're really form fitting. And then these Airfit ones are great sort of summer T-shirts. They're also thin and they're a little bit different. So they're great as well. And they're about a tenner. Great stream. Cheers, man. Nick, message retracted. You're gaming me, Nick. Now I want to know what it said. Please post it again. Keep it up. Thanks. Have you had any bad experience with clients, i.e. they weren't cooperating? I think one thing that I can say that I'm naturally gifted with, there's not many things that I think I'm actually naturally good at, and I don't think I'm really, really, really good at many things, but one thing that I am good at is adapting to other people. So, for example, even if I've got someone who would seem to be the opposite of a person that I could have a dialogue with, or who just is so different or so difficult, not because they're a bad person, but just because they've gone through different experiences or they've had very, very difficult social relations or experiences, is I know what my job is, and my job is to get inside their head, to understand where they're coming from, and then to give advice based on my experiences that's as close to helpful as it can be for them. So I try and get inside every client of mine's head, figure out exactly where they're coming from, put myself in their shoes, and then give myself the advice that I think is best. So I've had my worst experiences have been actually freelancing with other people. I think the great thing about Fluid Social, about my business, is that the people that I coach have been watching my videos, so they know what I'm about. Whereas some of the times if I've freelanced with other companies or with other organizations, then there's that less of that filter, right? They haven't seen what I'm about, and so they don't know if I'm worth talking to, and they probably wouldn't come to me if they did. So I haven't had any what I would call bad experiences with private clients. I've had experiences where we've gone out together and for whatever reason it's been difficult, but no, I've never had bad experiences. I can't link it though. YouTube removes all my links. What is it, man? What is it, Mr. Spot? Just tell me. How do you maintain an abundant mindset in London? How do you maintain an abundant mindset in London when you cannot day game and meet 30 plus women a week? How do you maintain an abundant mind? Got you. It's difficult, man. I think one surprising thing has been how tolerable it is for a lot of people, right? We think that without our ability to do that, I'm in Bath, by the way, not London, but without our ability to go out and approach, a lot of the times, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that our lives are just going to be immeasurably worse. And I don't really feel like my life is immeasurably worse. Some days are better, some days are worse. Mostly we adapt to our environments, and that's why we are where we are in the world, is because we've adapted. And I think in this case, again, you just adapt. You find abundance from other places. I've been like reading a lot, reading and writing. I've been reading poetry and writing poetry. And that is actually a really good way to maintain your sort of creativity and verbal dexterity. I'd really, really recommend it actually to anybody. That is one thing you can do. There's not many things you can do now. There's not many things you can do to keep yourself social and to keep that area of your life going and to keep the sort of gears in motion, keep the engine oiled. But one thing you can do is read and write. Reading is a sort of intake of the information. You take in a lot of information, you read new words, you improve your ability to link words together to create language, which is our primary mode of communication and is innately attractive, obviously, to women and men in all areas of your life. And then writing allows you to process it and give it your flavor, give it your own voice. So I've been reading a lot of English poets. I've been reading a lot of Ted Hughes and his wife Sylvia Plath, actually, who committed suicide, and their work is very sort of rich, and it rings a lot when you hear it. It's very, the sounds are very rich, and so I've been reading and writing poetry, and it's kept my sort of creativity and my ability to form complex language structures alive, and that's really helpful. A lot of you guys ask about texting and online game, as is the case right now, Phoenix, and that is going to be your training, right? Like, if you want to be able to come up with cool stuff to say, but you haven't been taking in any new information, it's going to be really difficult to say good things, like to say fun things. I think online, using things like Tinder and Bumble, I guess it's kind of a fun pastime if you enjoy it. And I guess there's no harm in setting up some links where you can, for maybe after the lockdown comes up, or if you can go to Sweden or Belarus, and not put other people at risk. But yeah, I think if you're going to do online, use online apps like Tinder and Bumble, I recommend reading and writing, and I do think there's no harm in it. So if you actually enjoy it, do it. But remember that you're probably not going to be able to meet up with these girls anytime soon, and once they get out of the house, they're probably not going to be staring at their Tinder all day. So maybe think about it more as like another way to pass your time and moderate it, as opposed to getting hooked on it as your next primary mode of dating and communication. For some reason, YouTube blocked my other account for spamming the link, but the video is some guy saying you're bad, says you're a white privileged private school guy. Dude, just tell me his name. Don't attach the link, Fosu Mensa. Just tell me his name. And he's probably, look, I don't mind. For some reason, right? Saying you're bad, saying I'm white privileged private school guy. I mean, that's all fair enough, isn't it, really? I mean, saying you're bad, I'm probably not good for everyone, and he might have a very different audience to me, and he's probably a much better fit for his audience. That's fine. Says you're white privileged. I am. Look, I went to private schools, and then I went to boarding schools. I've had an extremely fortunate upbringing in that sense. But look, when people say things like privilege, that's a very loaded term, right? Because you could be brought up in any environment, but no one knows what's happened in someone's personal life. So there are institutionalized biases still. And I don't think that it's all as the narrative says it is. I think some favor different groups in ways that aren't necessarily entirely understood. But privilege is a loaded term, and we can't put it all down to group privilege. I think that's a faulty logic. It's not all down to groups. And I certainly think that, I've had my fair share of difficulties in my life as well. And I don't think it's worth comparing one person's difficulties to another, because we just don't know what goes on in each other's heads. And I don't think we should spend our time thinking about it. We should just try and be kind to each other as much as possible, and get on with it. In response to your moving in with a girl answer, what would be the best and worst thing in a general sense, even if it's for a few weeks? The best and worst thing in general, man, to be honest, like, I think you've just got to look at it as an opportunity, right? What's gonna happen? It's like that sort of time when you're about to go on a date, with the first date. What happens is your mind prepares you in a way that you're not capable of doing unless it requires it. So your mind starts really waking up, and all of those complex processes happen so that it puts you on point. And sometimes when you've been doing that for a date and then the date flakes, you find yourself in this really energized and sort of productive and creative and powerful sort of place. And that's kind of the same with your situation. Like, you're going to move in with her, so it's going to make you sharp, man. It's going to make you on point. You're going to probably be less lazy. And you've got an opportunity to get to know someone really well, which is a great thing. I would just say make the most of that. There's no downside to that, to actually really getting to know this girl, whoever she is, and whether you're going to be in a relationship with her after, or continue being casual, or be nothing at all. Just see it as an opportunity to sort of dig into the life of someone else and get to know them. And I think then you can kind of have fun with it and see it as an opportunity rather than something to be terrified of. When you have a passion for day game, it's hard not to want to continue approaching sets now that we have to social distance. Very tempting when you see chicks still out dressing very provocative. Well, yeah, man, but that's the way it is. It doesn't make any sense to do it now. Firstly, because you're almost guaranteed a response that's, if not dismissive, is actually upset that you are, the narrative is very strongly that we're putting people at risk if we're maintaining social distance. I don't want to comment on, I don't know what it is. I don't want to comment on what I think because I don't know if that's true or what's happening. But if that's the perception, and you're coming up to her and standing right next to her, and she might live with elderly grandparents or vulnerable people, then you might genuinely be delivering a death sentence to her family members. So I get it. Like, I understand it. Very tempting. Yeah, it's tempting, but I know how you feel. But I wouldn't do it if I were you. His YouTube channel is called Andre #problem, and the video title is Dissing People or something like that. Cool, man. It sounds like that's how he's getting his attention. It sounds like that's how he's cool. Good for him. Everyone check it out. Andre #problem, where he disses me. Go check him out. He's hustling, even if that direction probably isn't a good one to come from. It's attacking other people. What do I know? Maybe it's good content. I'm going to check it out. I've never been to Sweden. If you've been before, can you talk a bit more about Swedish girls and how you find it over there? I've never been either, actually, man. It's a place I've always wanted to go. But when I've been traveling, it's been more in favor of sort of Eastern Europe and Latin America. Honestly, because I'm more drawn to the developing countries, because there's a sort of slightly less ordered and socialized, and I find that exciting. You get to see the rawness of a culture and not its sweet facade. You get to see the nitty gritty, and I like that. And they're cheaper to live and to get by, and it's all a bit more relaxed. So I haven't been to Sweden, but I have wanted to go to Scandinavia. I've been with Swedish women though, and I like them. They're cool. I imagine from what I've heard, Scandinavians in Scandinavia are a little bit more generally cold to the cold approach. It's generally less well done, but I've got some good friends living over there, both of whom I've coached actually, and now who go out together, and they're doing great. So I don't think any culture is necessarily, I know that no culture is off limits. The differences between individuals are far greater than the difference between genders and between cultures. So anytime we have a generalization about a culture, we must remember that it is just that, a generalization, because each individual is by such a greater margin more different from one another than cultures are from one another. How did you get into social skills dating coaching? What advice would you have for someone considering it as a career job? Hi Neil. I started working in university around the same time that I got interested in social skills. I went really, really heavy into it, as in I knew that this was what I was going to do. I had no doubt. There was no other option for me, because I needed two things. I needed to know, A, that it was possible, that it worked, right? That what you read in books and things, that you actually can go out and meet people, effectively meet women, and that it works. And so once I knew that, A, that was true, and then B, that it was possible to make a career out of it, right? That was a massive part for me. And then I read The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, and that was the sort of, I guess, the business side of it that gave me that motivation to just say, fuck it, I'm going to do this, because the risk of not doing it and taking the grad job or the office job, for me personally, nothing wrong with that, but for me personally, the risk of taking that job is greater, because I would be suffering every moment of every day, because it's not how my head works. So I knew that it wasn't even a risk me trying it. How did I do it? So I started working with students in university who had learning difficulties, autism and Asperger's spectrum disorders, ADHD, and I would be a peer mentor where I would help them in lectures and dinner halls and social spaces to meet other people and communicate and make friends. And so I would go out with a guy and I would help him with all his friends, and I would write sort of courses and syllabus for him. And then the manager of the company said, well, Sam, you know, he's 18, 19. I know that you're going out and meeting lots of women at the moment. Why don't you help him out? It would be great if we could find him a girlfriend or help him improve his skills like that. I obviously leapt at the opportunity because it felt like one of those times in your life where fate just hands you the perfect marriage of job opportunity and what you love doing and what you're good at. And so that landed in my plate, which gave me this huge motivation and sort of sense that I could actually do this. And so I kept going with him, learned everything I can. He's still a really good friend of mine and a great guy. I want to get him on a video at some point. And then I moved to London. I started sleeping. I basically applied for a job with every dating coach. I reached out to all of them, told them all about my experiences, offered to work for free. I offered to do free internships for virtually every dating coach in London that you can think of. And I told them about my experience. I told them what I'd bring to the company. A couple of them got back to me. I ended up getting, sort of doing some trial sessions with Kezia and getting to know Kezia Noble and her sister. And then I found myself friends with another coach called Matt on there, and he invited me to meet a guy called Baxter. And Baxter was Mystery's wingman, still is. And so I was editing videos for Baxter and then going out, and it was still on his channel, The Baxter Lifestyle, and going out with some other of his coaches, Matt included, and we'd go out and do some approaching and filming for his channel, and then I'd edit all the videos, and I slept on his sofa for a couple of months and then was between London and Nottingham. And then I finally started, I felt like I had the experience with video editing, with the business side of it, and with the actual skills myself and the experience coaching to start my own business. And so I did that, and then that's where we are now, really, a couple of years in. Favorite music artist right now? Don't say Kiasmos though. Oh, man, don't tell me that. Okay, my favorite music artists right now. I'm listening to a lot of music. I've got a playlist. I can share my playlist on Apple Music here. I'm listening to a load of different stuff. I was listening to the Kinks before I came online. John Hopkins it's quite close to Kiasmos, but John Hopkins, Jon Hopkins, is in my top 3 artists of all time. He's got an album called Singularity, which is sort of electronic dance music, but he's a genius. He's total musical genius. The music just opens up. It's beautiful. And that stuff's amazing if you like that sort of more experimental electronic music. But if you haven't really entered that realm of sort of electronic dance music and the more experimental side, then people just say this is just movie music or this is elevator music. But when you've sort of dipped your toes in and seen the artist live and got to know the music, then it becomes, the best music. But I think everybody says that about the style of music that they get into. But I'm listening to a lot of stuff, some classical music, modern classical music as well. And some hip hop at the moment. There's the channel GRM is releasing a lot of UK rap music at the moment, which is always pretty good. Like, Skepta, JME are releasing loads of stuff at the moment, which is quite fun to see what they're up to in quarantine and see what the UK scene is doing. Flip River, right now my sex life is dead, brother. But outside of this, it's great. I've got, if that's your question, I guess I would say that I've got, I'm not in any exclusive relationships, but I've got some girls, some sort of partners, I suppose, that for different reasons and in different contexts I care very deeply about, but we don't have exclusive relationships. And then And then I've been dating some other girls as well. But it's, it goes through stages. Oftentimes, if I go back to Brazil, then, I get really excited by it for a couple of weeks or a month or so. And then I sort of settle down and find someone that I'm really chilled out with, and we spend some time together like that. But no, at the moment, it's not great, mate. How's your sex life? It's not about the numbers. Yeah, I understand that. I understand. It's about having a life that your clients would look up to. Yeah, I mean, if you look right now, I mean, what is there to say? What do you say to girls when they ask you if you're a virgin and you actually are, or if they ask how many girls have you been with? Honestly, man, I would just tell them the truth about it and own it. I think it's much more attractive to for a guy to just be completely honest about it, look her in the eye with no hesitation or no awkwardness and just say that. I think that's probably much more attractive, because what it suggests is that you're going to be like that about other things too. If you can just say, I've never slept with anyone, I'm a total virgin. If you say that with that level of confidence, then what you're communicating is not that you're weak because you haven't had sex, but that when you're faced with situations that most people would feel awkward and weak about, that it doesn't bother you. So what's this girl who is essentially subconsciously assessing your value as a potential mate? What message, what signal is that giving her? Well, it's telling her that you're probably a very good potential partner, because you're not embarrassed by things that other people would be embarrassed by, right? It's courage, it's resilience, it's thick skin. And those are all attractive qualities. So I would be honest about it, whatever the case is. And then I would ask her the same question. How many guys have you been with? Because there's also a level at which her asking you that question is not a test, but it's like seeing what she can get away with and without being willing to answer the same question. So it's not a sign that she's a bad person or that she's a bitch or anything like that. It's just if a girl asked me that question, I would have absolutely no qualms or hesitations about asking her the same question, right? And I would want to know the answer, right? It doesn't matter how many, but you can just talk about it, talk about the experiences. The more honest you can be, the earlier in a relationship, the better. Because you're either getting to know a relationship that's going to be very good, or you're getting to know a relationship that's not going to be good. And if it's not going to be good, then you're not wasting any time. And if it is going to be good, then you're getting to the good part sooner. So just honesty is like a shortcut and a hack to all of this. It's not that I'm saying you sacrifice being attractive by being completely honest. I really, really believe that it's a more attractive way to be, when you can be honest about how you're feeling, about your past, about your history. Because it means that if you start that early in a relationship, it means that when it gets to things like, sex, when it gets to you're in the bedroom with her, it means that you're going to be able to talk about what she likes and what she doesn't like and things like that. If you find yourself in a relationship where it's maybe awkward, or even dating a girl where it's awkward to talk about what she likes during sex, then I think you've probably should adapt the relationship to go more in that direction. It's like the physicality thing. If you start touching someone early, even if it's a guy friend or a girlfriend or a date, if you introduce physicality early on, the relationship tends to develop where physicality is natural, because you have shown yourself as a naturally physical person. So I ingrained that habit in myself when I was about 19, 20, when I was learning this. I would literally go out and just be physical. I had some friends who, when they saw me, they'd put their hands around my waist, like next to me. They're just very physical, always hand on the shoulder, slap on the back, just guy friends like that. And before I learned this, it was just like, oh, he's just really physical. But when I would see that guy with women, it was the same. And, they would be hugging where I would be holding hands, or they would be playing with each other's hands where I wouldn't be touching hands and things like that. And I realized that it's just showing yourself early on to be a physical person. And in the same way, honesty is the same. If you just let her speak to you about whatever she wants, whether that be how she likes to have sex, or how many partners she's had, or what was her, worst experience, best experience, whatever you can talk about, the more honest it is, the better it is in every way. You're going to be more attracted to each other in the long run. and the relationship's going to be better, even if it's a casual relationship. Flip River, man, you're not putting me on the spot, dude. It's all good. Keep them coming. Khalid. Hey, Khalid, how are you doing, man? Thank you. Changed your life. Thank you, bro. Yeah, it was a pleasure working with you, man. I hope you're okay. Hope everything's is going well now. I remember our last time when we were in Ruby's bar in Stoke Newington, which is a great little bar if anyone lives around northeast London. There's a bar called Ruby's Bar on the Kingsland High Street, Kingsland Road, and that's a really cool place. It's got like a little club bar area on the right, and then a little private date cocktail bar on the left. So you'll enjoy that. Emre, what do you think about Justin Mark? Don't know who he is. Nick, what age do you think is best to settle down and have one girlfriend for the rest of the life? You're welcome for all the videos, Nick. What age do you think is best to settle down and have one girlfriend for the rest of your life? Nick, I don't even know with 100% clarity that is the best way to have a life. I suspect that for most people it is. I think that for most people, they actually would have a better, in the sense of a higher amount of their time spent satisfied and happy with one woman whom they love. But I don't think that's the case for everyone. What age do you think is best? And I really don't think there is an age. Like if you met someone at the age of 21, 22, 23, I mean, it would be better a bit later, I think. I imagine around the 30s would be the best, just because at least you've had all the, as many experiences as you can have before. But let's say you're early 30s or late 20s, early 30s. I think if you meet a woman and spending time with that woman is more enjoyable and fulfilling to you than spending your time with other people. And when you're with other people, you wish she was there. And when you're with her, you don't want to be with anyone else. Like I'm talking like I'm very familiar with this. I'm not that familiar with that feeling, actually. But I think if you meet someone like that, then I think that's a pretty good bet for the moment. And then the way I would frame that relationship is not the whole thing that we get used to of talking about the rest of your life. I think that puts such a burden of pressure onto young individuals to keep talking about the rest of our lives as if they have some sort of control over what's going to happen in their lives, whether that be personally or coronavirus wise. But just to take it day by day and to say to each other, essentially, I like being with you today. I like you a lot. I think you're great. Right now, everything's perfect. I hope it continues, right? Not making any false promises. I think that would be optimum. I don't know if that's broadly achievable for everyone, because we do sort of fall into the trap of future planning and talking about the rest of our lives. And then I think that sort of invites jealousy and regret and worries about what could have been when they're not necessarily necessary. I think a lot of the healthiest relationships that I see, and certainly that I've been in, some of which I'm sort of still in many ways, are ones where we don't have any possession of one another, where I don't, maybe I would feel a twang of jealousy if she got, hooked up with another guy and I found out, but it would be something I could talk to her about. It wouldn't be something that you bottle up. And I think those are I think in a monogamous relationship and an exclusive relationship, I think that's what you should be aiming for, not non-exclusivity, but to be able to just say, like, let's just be honest about it. Right now, it's absolutely perfect. I love it. I hope you do too. This is great. Let's continue. And then if something happens and you find yourself not feeling the same way, then you can address that and cross that bridge when you come to it. But I wouldn't preemptively be trying to guess away. What percentage of Brazilian girls speak English or Spanish, would you estimate? It depends on the city, Andrew Martinez. I would say in Rio, percentage speaking English citywide is about 20-30%. In terms of the women that if you travel there that you're going to encounter, I would say much higher, because you're going to be around Leblon or Ipanema in most cases if you're not familiar. So I would say around those areas most of the time it's maybe 40% speak English. And then if it's a holiday time or Rio Carnival, which we're going to be doing again this year, which is the best party in the world, then it's way higher, because the Brazilian girls are mostly traveled to Rio for the carnival. And so generally speaking, women that travel or can afford to travel have also been educated better. And so they normally speak English as well. So at that time, it's maybe 60-70% English speaking. Spanish is roughly 30-40%, I think, that you'll encounter in Rio normally. But if you speak Spanish, I'd imagine that you could speak to most of them, because I'd imagine that you can speak to most of them, because Spanish and Portuguese are fairly similar, except in the way that some letters are pronounced, but you could probably get by. My sex life isn't great myself. Moved to a new city 6 months ago. Got into cold approach the year before and had occasional dates. Before that, I had a few relationships. Cool, man. In a game, tips we can work on during lockdown. I want to work on growing more confidence to believe that I'm worthy of approaching and closing the 9s and 10s in my book. Aiken Lamb. Let me say that again. I was whispering. In a game, tips we can work on during lockdown. Want to work on growing more confidence to believe that I'm worthy of approaching and closing the 9s and 10s in my book. Thanks, Sam. I think that is a long process that requires experience approaching everyone and sort of getting to know yourself throughout it. I think one common problem that you might be facing, everyone kind of faces, is the way that we respond to our nervousness or our fear. So if you see someone beautiful, if you see someone very beautiful that you really like the look of, then often what happens is that this fear comes, and then your thing of like, no, I'm an alpha male. I'm a high value man. I shouldn't be feeling fear. Damn this fear. Let me act like I don't have this fear. I'm going to go and approach and say what Rollo Tomasi told me to say, and actually what we should do is be like, fuck, I'm scared. Feel it. You've got to feel the fear. You've got to feel it, because the 9s and 10s have things that scare them too, and fear is relatable, and it's not innately unattractive. It's only unattractive when we pretend that we're not scared, because that shows an inability to accept the way we are, a sort of hatred of the way that we are, and self-hatred in that sense is not attractive. Sort of a discomfort with yourself is not really attractive. There has to be some level at which you can accept the way that you are, and often that comes with fear being sort of embraced, and then going up to that girl and just with whatever you're feeling, because a lot of the time she looks wonderful on the outside, and then she's anxious on the inside, and she's not looking for a guy that's just the Chad that you see in those movies. She's looking for someone that's just like down to earth and got a sense of humor and can laugh at themselves, and is not running away or hiding or just sort of weird and secretive and stuff like that. They just, when I think about my sisters, I've got a sister, so I think I've had an advantage in learning a bit about female communication. But when I think about my sister's boyfriend, he's just a fucking good guy, and I think that's what a lot of women want. They get bored of it after a while, all this sort of chasing and the games, and they just want someone who's sure of themselves, not even extroverted or really, really confident, but just sure of themselves and fun to be around, and nice and kind, and you'll look after them. And so I think that is something to aspire for. And sorry, I went on a bit of a rant there, Aiken. In terms of what can you do, I wouldn't do too much. I wouldn't think too much about women and dating and all of this stuff. I wouldn't perseverate on it too much. I wouldn't let it dominate your mental space right now. I would use this time to focus on other things that you can get really into, that are actually going to help it as well. So for me, I could go away and read all of the books on psychology and gender psychology that I like, or I could find something like poetry that's actually really interesting right now as well, and gives you as a sort of side product or a side effect, it gives you a great verbal dexterity, creative intelligence, ability to problem solve. It becomes like a jigsaw puzzle when you're reading it and writing it and figuring out, how to make it rhyme or how to make it have a dramatic effect. And then if you pick up your phone and want to message the girl that you're attracted to, it's all there. Like, how to string the words together because you've been practicing. But the practicing hasn't been with that in mind. Your whole life isn't, revolving around dating and pickup artistry. It's revolving around doing the things that you enjoy that are making you better, and then as a side effect, those are also helping. So maybe it's good to have a look at things that find that crossover that you're actually interested in, that are relevant to the time that you're spending now, that you can enjoy, but that also help you with your language skills and your communication skills. So, calling a lot of your friends, calling maybe people that you wouldn't normally call, maybe having a chat with some girls that you want to see and seeing if you can get them on the phone and reading and writing and telling them about what you're doing. Because people like to hear it. When people are having a conversation, basically, they all just want the other person to tell them something interesting that they're doing. A lot of the time when we're in conversation with women in the street or on the phone, it's not about us saying, smooth lines. They just want you to tell them something that you're interested in. So if you tell them, I'm reading a really good book at the moment, they'll just be like, what's the book? You tell them about it, tell them that you like it, and that's good conversation content. Try and keep it all grounded and don't get carried away with perfecting your, everything. Just try and keep your relationships grounded as much as you can. Right, actually played a COVID nono and had a girl over the other day from Bumble, but I didn't make a move. Cool, man. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, fine. I don't really want to do that right now, but maybe I will at some point, and I'll talk to you guys about it. If you have questions, I can help you with the online stuff as well, maybe Tinder and Bumble and things like that, and how to write good descriptions and stuff. If you drop me an email or something. I think she got bored, saw me as unattractive due to lack of confidence to just make a move, and she called an Uber home within 5 seconds or saying we should hang out again. No, man, that doesn't necessarily. If she says we should hang out again and she sounds like she means it, then she probably does want to see you again. And even if you could have, done something differently and maybe, got intimate with that girl, just because she called an Uber home doesn't mean she doesn't want to again. It doesn't matter. I make sure that, it's always very clear that she can go if she wants, and if we don't, get intimate, that's not that important to me, because I think it relaxes everyone, and it's not always, you don't always have to get it all done on the first date. You don't have to, it's just all this pressure that we tend to pile on ourselves as men to, make everything happen right now. And often what women really like is a guy that is keen to have sex with them, that wants to have sex with them, but doesn't care that much, right? He's perfectly comfortable with her saying, no, I'm not, I don't want to come to yours tonight. And you being like, cool, let's get you an Uber home. And yeah, we'll talk soon. I'll see you again. And actually expecting to see her again and just reading it the way that it is, and not reading into it that you're unattractive or that you got something wrong. Because that starts the process of getting it wrong. When you start thinking, oh, I'm getting this wrong, I'm doing it wrong. Well, now you are. Before you were fine. But now you're reading a false narrative into the situation, or maybe a narrative that is just unnecessary. So just sometimes you can see things at face value. I would call that more a scarcity mindset. What's a scarcity mindset? Yes, sir. I don't know what you're referring to. Yes, sir. Cool, guys. Well, the questions are drying up. It's turning into a little forum, which is great as well. I wish I could let you continue on the live chat. I think that's great. Everyone having a little chat with each other. One thing you can do, guys, why don't you, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a way that everyone can kind of get in touch with each other without, chucking their WhatsApp numbers all over YouTube. But what I can do, I guess, this is a spontaneous thought for 17 people watching, is if you do send me, you've got my number at the top of this thread, I think. Now I'm going to leave it here. You can drop me a WhatsApp message, and I'll put everyone who wants to be in a group together. And if that group gets boring or dramatic, I'm not going to do anything. It's not my responsibility once you're in there. But I'm leaving my number there. If you want to drop me a message or text me a number or tell me that you want to get in a group with the other guys that are going to be watching the channel or doing this stuff, then I can throw you guys together and sort of remain in the group, but not really take too much responsibility for what's happening inside it. And we can see how that goes. So yeah, feel free to drop me a message to that number. If there's one more, I'm going to take one more question. So whichever one is the best here, and then we can save the rest for Sunday. I'll do another one at 6 p.m. on Sunday. Yeah, that Casanova book. I'm actually going to find it right now. Which one is it? Ian Kelly. Ian Kelly. That's the author. The author's name is Ian Kelly. IANKELLY. The whole monogamy. This is the final question. Final question. The whole monogamy thing you were talking about. Right, no. Okay, there's no more questions. Cheers, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and see you back here on Sunday. Feel free to ask any further questions on the community page that I recently did a post. And yeah, thanks for watching. Look forward to seeing you all again. Take care. Big up. Stay safe. Sam out.